Hi guys, Mr. Rice here, and today we're going to walk through how to make your own platformer in Makecode Arcade. So let's go over to this screen. So this is the Makecode Arcade website, link here provided. Also in the details, you can click on the link there to get here. We're going to use one of the tutorials today called the Game Maker Guide. So click on Game Maker Guide, and we're going to just start with simple platformer. And we'll walk through all the levels eventually, but today we'll just start with simple platformer. Learn how to make a player character that can jump around and move around on a tile map. Platformer games are pretty common. Video games, think of like the Super Mario Brothers series. Mario's going from one side of the screen to the other, where there's the goal. Usually there's obstacles or enemies in the way. So we're going to make one of our own in Makecode Arcade. So it says, first, let's create a sprite for the player. Drag out a set my sprite to sprite of kind player block and place it on start. Change the variable name to the player and draw an image for the sprite. So to create a sprite, you click on the sprites toolbox. We're going to grab the first one in the list there, which says set my sprite to. We're going to put it at the bottom of the code there. It says change the variable name to the player. So to change the variable name, you click on the name of the variable. Right now it is my sprite, but let's rename that variable to the player. And notice first letter is lowercase, and then every other word is uppercase. Variable names cannot have spaces in them. So we use something called camel case, as you can see here. Let's zoom in a little. Okay. And draw an image for the sprite. I'm not a very good drawer, so this is going to just be a stick figure. That's pretty good. He's a cutie. This is the drawing toolbox. Notice I just have some simple tools here. I just use the pen tool and one color. Maybe I'll give him a blue face. There we go. Looks pretty good. I'm going to click done and click next. Now we need to get the player moving. Drag out a move sprite with buttons block and place it at the end of on start. Okay, so to do that, click on controller. Move my sprite with buttons. Now, when you do that, you'll notice you get an error. If you click on the error, it says variable my sprite is never assigned. That's because you changed the name of your variable to the player. So click on the player instead of my sprite, and the error should go away. Like so. Press the plus button and change the VY argument to 0. So notice there's a VX100 and a VY100. We're going to change the VY to 0. So now my character can only move left and right. He used to be able to do up and down, but because we changed VY, or velocity Y, to 0, he can no longer move up and down. He can only move left and right. That's what changing that does. Okay, great. We can move the sprite with the buttons now. However, it looks pretty strange to have it floating in midair. Let's add some gravity. In Makecode Arcade, positive Y values are in the down direction. We'll be setting the acceleration Y to positive so that the sprite will fall down. Drag out a set sprite x2 block and place it at the end of on start. So sprite blocks are in the sprites drawer. Set my sprite x2. We'll place it at the end here. Change the variable from my sprite to player once again. And change the drop down to AY. Right now the X is what's selected. We only want to change the acceleration on the Y axis. So choose AY. And set the value to 500. Okay, so now that will act as like gravity, and you see at the start of my game, the sprite's in the middle, and then he like drops down, and that's because we've made gravity in our game by changing the AY acceleration Y number. So notice now my player drops down to the middle from the middle of the screen to the floor. And that's because we've set the acceleration or the gravity of the game to 500. You can make him fall faster by increasing that number or make him fall slower by decreasing that number. Okay, so to make the player jump, we want to set the velocity so that they travel upwards. We change the acceleration to make them fall. We change the velocity to make them go upwards. And to move up the screen, we need to have a negative velocity y. It's kind of like the opposite of your math class graph. You move down the screen with positive numbers. You move up the screen with negative numbers. So it's a little backwards, but you'll get used to it. Drag out a set sprite X2 block and place it inside on a button pressed. So go to the sprites drawer, change my sprite to the player, and change X. Now we want to select velocity Y. And we're going to change the velocity to negative 200. So now when I press the A button, he should jump and then come back down. And if you want to make him jump a little less high, or if you want to make him jump less high, you make that number lower. If you want to make him jump more high, you make that a greater number. I think that's a pretty solid jumping mechanic right there, though. So I'm going to keep it the same. That's it. We've created a simple platformer game. The character moves to the left and right, and he can jump up and down. Wow, pretty exciting, isn't it? In the next lesson, we'll be adding obstacles and goals to our game. So thanks for watching this video, and watch part 2 after this. Bye, y'all.